So we're here with David Friedman. I'm Eric Coe of NYC Pickleball, and just having a conversation here at Squibb Park at Brooklyn Bridge. Why don't you tell us a little bit, like, what's the significance of this park for you?
Yeah. So Eric, good to see you. Squibb is where we first learned to play pickleball in New York. You know, I've been playing pickleball for maybe 6 years now, but like Squibb very much feels like that home playground in New York where pickleball more or less came alive for me in New York.
So was this your first, where was your first exposure to pickleball?
First exposure to pickleball was actually on a family vacation in Columbus, Ohio.
That's an interesting choice of a family vacation.
You know what? It was a family trip. We were stuck for a few days. One of my siblings went to like Target or Walmart or
ahead
something.
Of the curve.
Found like a backyard pickleball set. Brought it home. We didn't know what it was. We set it up, played it for 2-3 days. We're like, this is a lot of fun. And then from there, tried to just find more places to play.
And then how did this area come about? How did you find a Squibb?
So this area, really, we started playing over at the pier right behind us. There are handball courts. I found there was like an Instagram. I think Jody was running it.
Okay, yeah.
And it was just like Tuesday night pickleball or something. And I was like, screw it, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna see if anyone's actually there. No one posted on the Instagram for like a month and a half at that point. I was hopeful. It was like October and cold, but screw it. And I was biking down and I could like hear the pop of the pickleball on the handball courts, like before it was all built up. That was fun. That was exciting.
And what year was that?
That's like September, October of 2020.
Okay, so COVID.
Summer, right after the first summer of COVID, which I can't believe it's like, it's coming on 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, we started playing August of 2020, same thing, random like Dick's Sporting Goods or Modell's, bought a set, and it was that summer of 2020, so.
Where did you start?
Astoria Park. Okay. So like back then the parks didn't require the tennis permit, so we would like bring our paddles and our balls, and we brought like soccer cones to like, we'd measure out with our tape measure the dimensions, we'd use the net, and people looked at us like we were crazy, but
this is you and Ray?
Me, Ray, and Gene, so it was 3 of us. And then we'd like have to beg a random friend to be like, hey, come play this ridiculously named sport. We had a friend come out, first time playing, ruptured her Achilles. We're like, oh damn.
Holy shit.
This is not just a sport for, older people, or like, my mom was playing at the time, so that's how it kind of brought back into my life. But yeah, it's unbelievable that it was 3 years ago.
And it's COVID. I mean, right. So right after that summer of COVID, really got into it. It's getting dark at that point at like 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Ditching out of work by 2:30, 3 o'clock. Try to get like some early daylight hours to go and play.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, high priority. Especially at that time, like having some social connections.
Yeah.
Being able to play a sport and get out. I mean, everything was still closed down.
Yeah.
And I think New York's unique in that pickleball sense.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other cities, a lot of other places still had enough open where they could play. That summer I spent some time in Florida right before coming back.
Okay.
And played in Florida.
Yeah,
and so that was fun. And then try to find it here.
Yeah, so this trying to find it here, like I guess that kind of leads us to a segue of like, the reason we're having this conversation is because, some big news in case you haven't heard, but, David is opening an indoor facility called PKLYN in Gowanus, Brooklyn. So talk to us a little bit about like, you were playing, you were just, amateur just for fun. What was the moment where you thought, hey, like we need to find a space, or I need to find a space? Like, talk us through that.
So at that point, I had already been like dabbling in pickleball for about 3 years.
Yeah.
But I had never found anywhere to play in New York. So it never to what I knew ever became big or actually had other people involved. I would look on Facebook and try to find some places.
Did you see the Stuytown Pickleball Club back then?
No.
Yeah, because I think on their courts, that's when I was like looking around New York, there was like there was a New York Urban League at some point, and then Stuytown also had pickleball courts. And like, I remember this was 2018 or 2019, I was like, hey, can I come even though I don't have a paddle? And they were like, yeah, sure. I just like, Stuytown's like impossible to get to, but.
You are definitely a superior Googler than I am. Like, I couldn't find anything. The closest thing I found was Court 16 out in Queens.
I'm surprised I even had it back then.
So they sort of did. I went.
Yeah.
It was very empty.
Yeah.
And it was far for me to go. But so I guess long story short is that I'm here and finally found some people to play with.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. And like, it was good connections and it was good people. And we're playing and it's October, November, December.
Yeah.
It's cold. And it doesn't change the calculus for people. They're still coming out. You know, whether we're playing in multiple layers or, you know, hats, whatever. It was frankly freezing. I mean, it's below 32 degrees. We would play and it would be snowing.
Yep.
It would be hailing, right?
Didn't matter.
Nasty.
Yeah.
The ball is like an ice cube. It hurts.
Yeah.
And so there was just such dedication. It was a great community. Just seeing it grow, and it just kept growing even through these winter months.
Yeah.
And you know, it's winter. We had nowhere to play, so it's like, man, obviously, everyone would just love somewhere to go and play.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's when really started thinking, why isn't there a pickleball facility in New York?
Yeah.
I'm sure so many people have had this thought and think about it the same way, right? You play and like, man, how is this gaping hole here?
Right. So this is 2021.
This is 2020.
Right, because you've been through, well 2020 because you started like, I guess like 2020 leading into 2021 because like the middle of the winter,
yes.
Right? And so I guess like, had you seen other facilities popping up and like across the nation, or like what made you think like I can do it here, even though maybe you haven't heard of it popping up, you know, elsewhere?
I guess I wasn't really sure I could do it here. I think I just really wanted to.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I think I was ill-equipped to do it then. And like between work and COVID, there was just like a lot going on and nothing going on at the same time.
Sure, yeah.
It was like a mental strain.
Yeah.
And so something that excited me, something else to look into, but at the time it certainly felt more overwhelming.
Yeah, it was like a dream a little bit, but like you were starting to like...
It was a total dream, but started to put out feelers.
Yeah.
And started to explore it more. And the more people I would talk to, more of the response I would get is, find a space first.
Yeah. And so these people you're referring to as in like players or potential investors, or who are these conversations with? People,
even in a nutshell, it could be someone even like my wife.
Yeah.
You know, like before there's even anything to really talk about and you're daydreaming about leaving your job.
Yeah, find a space.
Like one step at a time.
Yeah, sure.
You know, so it's like cold emailing some brokers.
Yeah.
Trying to find some random broker to help you find it. And they don't, especially in 2020, they didn't understand what pickleball was.
Nope.
They don't understand what to look for. I mean, you know, and they don't know how serious you are.
Yeah.
And no landlords know what pickleball is.
Yeah.
What happened was in February of 2021, I was playing down on the handball courts. I don't remember who I was playing with. I know Chad Remus was on the other side of me. Someone else too. But it was cold. 3 or 4 hours into playing, went for a shot, and somehow, I have no idea how, but broke my leg.
Wait, you broke your entire...
I broke right above my ankle.
Oh my God.
And broke it in 3 different places. I didn't trip. It
was too cold. It literally just shattered your bone.
I think my body was tired, or with the concrete and the cold, and just like a funky step.
Yeah.
Something. And so, yeah. Then I broke my ankle. Now it's still COVID.
Yeah.
It's winter, getting dark at whatever time, right? And so it was totally depressing. And it's like, well, now's a good time to really double up on the efforts to
find a space.
Try and find a space and try to put together that business plan and try to take those next steps to take a sort of dream and trying to make it more of a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like let's take one step back. What is or was your like career leading up to this, and like how did that prepare you or not prepare you for this next step?
So it's a good question. So I was a real estate attorney.
Okay, that's convenient.
It was totally convenient. You know what, and actually backing up even more of a step of even when you ask me why I thought this was something that could be done, or why it even was an avenue that I thought was worth exploring for me, was because of the real estate component. It didn't feel so out of reach in that sense, because like I was already dealing with properties every day. I was already dealing with commercial leases every day. There was a lot of things that's like, well, instead of doing it for someone else, why not do it for myself? It's still kind of naive at the time, because doing it, actually doing it, or being the attorney that represents some clients to do it is very different. But the real estate helped it make sense. It made it feel like achievable. Or at least that I knew the right ways to start it, what that process might look like.
Right. No, totally makes sense. I mean, I remember when the fateful call that we had in 2022.
Was that 20? I think that was 2021. I really think I had my broken leg at the time.
I think you did. So maybe it was 2021. Right. It was 2021.
It's crazy.
Right. So like our paths were like so parallel, right? Because like we discovered it around the same time. You know, me and Ray, my wife, like we live in Queens, and so similar thing. We were playing out there. You were playing down here. We didn't really have a community. You guys were so lucky to have this, and Jody and you know the people that were down here willing to, you know, stay out in the cold and play. And we did a little road trip to go visit like our in-laws in Memphis and Asheville, and that's when we kind of discovered the true kind of communal nature of pickleball, right? Like the bringing your nets, open plays, mixing around, whatever. Like we hadn't experienced that here in New York, and it was like it opened up so many things, and we got so addicted that same thing, 5 o'clock on the dot, out at the courts. They had beautiful courts. They had already converted tennis courts.
In Memphis?
In Memphis, they had lights, like...
you're like, oh, the dream.
Yeah.
What?
It was ridiculous. They had lights. We were drilling until 11 in like 30-degree weather, right? So like the obsession was the same. And when we came back, same thing, like that February, March, we were like on LoopNet looking, and then...
LoopNet.
Yeah. It's crazy. You know, Ray being in part of like the restaurant industry and like having that experience, like she kind of led that charge, and I was in finance, but had no idea what like operating a physical space would ever be like. And so she was looking, and we were interested, and then we had that call with you, and we're like, hey, like you're a real estate attorney, right? Like, do you know any, or you're a lawyer, like do you happen to know any real estate attorneys? And I think you very quickly like picked up on like, well, like, you know, maybe like what are you looking for?
I do think I told you guys right away. I was like, just to be transparent.
Exactly. Yes.
You know.
100%. And this is why I actually think this was definitely in 2022, because we hadn't met yet. Because we came back to New York, and then we started playing that entire summer, 2021 leading into 2022. And that's when we kind of got integrated in like the rest of the community.
I don't know. We're gonna have to debate.
Yeah,
this
we're gonna go back to the
because-
chats.
Well, I think it predates the chats, because I think the first time I met you and Ray was on the handball courts.
Yeah.
I would say this was very early in 2021, because Dewey Tran was trying to up everyone's game.
Right.
They started giving free
The drilling
lessons on like Saturday morning, Sunday mornings.
Yep.
It would show up huddled and frozen.
Yeah.
And it was new and early, and it was just like really that sort of core group that started there. And
we did show up.
no
Yeah,
offense,
we did show up.
I'm pretty sure there was one week where you like crashed it.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'd want to join.
Right. And then took over one of the courts.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
It was actually a rainy day, and you were playing out on the edge by the water, so you were getting like some water
side.
blowing in, and
Yeah.
it was you and Ray playing one-on-one.
Yeah, we were drilling.
And then towards the end of Dewey's lesson, then I jumped in on a game to play against you guys.
It was you and Ultimate Frisbee. What the girl who travels to play Ultimate Frisbee? Oh shoot. I remember.
No,
yes,
no,
that
no.
okay. Vivid memory, except for her name. We'll remember her name later. Yeah, that was when we first met.
Jackie.
Jackie, yes, Jackie. Okay, yeah, we'll have to figure out. That was when we first met, and then I think
it was later. So then I think
Yeah.
by the time we had the call, like at least we did know,
Yeah.
kind of like, in some
Who
way,
each
at
other
least
were.
who each other was.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when did you first like go to a site visit?
With my broken leg. That's when I started really doing site visits.
Yeah.
And with my broken leg, that's when I really started switching up the brokers, because I was talking with them other brokers, didn't feel like they quite understood,
Yeah.
they didn't seem serious enough, and really started going through a rotation of trying to find different brokers.
Yeah, like what's kind of like, you first meet a broker, what are you looking for in someone to represent you?
Someone who believes me,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Is that the hardest thing?
then it was, because back in early 2021, not many people in New York knew what pickleball was.
Yeah.
So you're telling them, here's this thing you want to do, it's pickleball. They're like, that's cool, never heard of it, you know? And I don't know, try and do it. And you're like, here are dimensions for courts, and here's what I need for
Ceilings, columns.
And they're like, here, I found you a place. And it has like 8-foot ceilings, 7-foot column spacings. I'm exaggerating,
Yeah.
but where they just so obviously didn't put time or effort into it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then started asking people and starting to get more recommendations.
Got it.
And then there was a guy in like New Jersey. I don't remember his name, but he really recommended these other brokers.
Yeah.
And he totally hyped it up for me. He's like, yo, you guys should do this. They'll succeed. They'll find a place. It'll be worth your while. It's like early 2021. I'm like, I don't know about that.
He believed in you more than you might have believed in yourself.
I think it helps even give a degree of confidence, and you want to follow through for the people who are also helping you out.
Yeah. What did your wife think when you started going down this road? And what's her name again?
Alex.
Alex. What did she think when you started really going down this road in earnest?
I think I'll have like a lot of ideas. I'll be like, oh, I want to stop doing whatever I'm doing. I want to go make cardboard furniture, or I want to go and do, like dig up ice cores and put them in nice cocktails or something, whatever.
Yeah.
So for her, it was like finally something that makes sense.
Right, that aligns with,
Yeah.
There's some business but passion that like could be viable.
And it's real estate, and he can like use his skills for it, and
Yeah.
it's like, so she's very supportive.
Yeah.
She was supportive of making it a reality and not keeping it as a dream.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's my number 2, like that encouragement, and and she's tough. She'll definitely be like, what are you doing? You got to make it happen.
Right. She's making sure you're on task.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to like the real estate component, like what was the first space that you saw where you're like, I can visualize this happening here?
Yeah. So, and it's a great question, and like I know you've looked at real estate spaces too. Like, sometimes it's mixed emotions. Some places you can see and talk yourself into things.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not what your original vision is, but it's like, well, this could be some really exclusive club.
Right.
It's
Yes.
like
Oh, yeah.
the most badass courts in the world.
Yeah. Look at the view from these windows on 1.5 courts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Like we do 2 courts in here, and it is beautiful, and
Yep.
somehow it needs to be for Bill Gates only.
Yes. Maybe we're describing the same space.
So that happened.
Yeah.
I think some of the earliest spaces, there was a couple of days where I went, maybe it felt like a couple of days, maybe it was one long day, went with the broker. We just went from place to place to place.
Mm-hmm.
So we hopped around a bunch in like Williamsburg, hopped around, like sort of Cobble Hill, downtown Brooklyn, Gowanus, some in Bushwick, and made a full day out of it. So there's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
There's a lot to see, and because that was more of my first exposure, in some ways you can get overwhelmed because you see a place that looks rough.
Yep.
You know, you're like, this is not like going to look for a residential apartment to rent.
Yeah.
You know, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so
Like no lighting, no HVAC, no anything.
water coming out of the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, oh, was that a cat or a rat that went by? It might have been both.
Yeah.
So totally like New York, warehousey / commercial spaces that, you know, have potential, I guess.
Yeah.
But you got to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, there was one, you know, saw like a nice place by Wegmans, for example. You know, maybe you've seen it. I don't know. You know, in the Navy Yard area.
Yeah.
You go up and it's really nice and looks good. You're like, well, this could work, right? And maybe it could. And you start to figure out like the pricing on it, and you start to really think about the location. You see one in Bushwick, it's a lot cheaper, but like, you know, the build out.
How do you get there? Yeah.
You know, so you're trying to think of location, trying to think of the structure, trying to think of the build out. But in all honesty, and this is in all honesty, there was only one place that I actually fell in love with and really wanted. And ultimately, after like, from the time of really first seeing it, right? So this would be 2020. Yeah, it's been, is that a year now? Is that 2.5 years? What?
You tell me when you fell in love.
Let's call it March of 2021.
Okay.
That's 2 years ago. I mean more. I guess is when I first saw this space.
Yeah.
And really loved the space.
And this is a space.
I cannot believe it's been that long.
I know.
Yes. Ultimately, this is the space we have.
I think, you know, we've experienced this from like a, you know, residential side. You know, they always say like, don't fall in love with the first place or whatever. And like, it's so hard because you have to visualize it. You have to imagine yourself committing to a space, right? And you have to imagine like this could possibly be our home. And so often, so many people put that effort in, that mental and emotional effort in, only for things to fall apart for a plethora of reasons, right? So
it fell apart.
Right. So yeah. So tell us about that.
Well, before I go to that, I want to, like, there were some places you look at that have good spacing, look good, but it's like underground, and you're like, because you're talking about being a home.
Yeah.
And so you go to this like home, and like, man, I'm gonna have to live here. Do I really want to live underground?
In the basement.
Yeah. You're like, I guess this could fit courts, but like, it's not pleasant to me. You know, It's not something that I really want to bring to the community. So it's trying to walk this balance of somewhere that feels somewhere you really want to be, somewhere that feels like home, especially if it's like a long-term lease.
Yeah.
With actually fitting certain criteria that you need to do pickleball. To answer your question of this space, so I fell in love with the current space that we're now in contract for, and that's in Gowanus. I love Gowanus. I think there's a lot of development going on, but conveniently it's also like 6 blocks from my house. And so I knew if I had to live somewhere, I'm a whole lot more likely to live somewhere that's close by to me than if it was a half hour, 45-minute drive away.
Yeah.
But architecturally, it was just cool. Like it's got 23 skylights. The columns are good. The floor is good. The building's been really well cared for. It's architectural. You come up to it, it just feels good. You know, it's on the canal. It's just pretty. And good curb appeal. It's somewhere fresh. It just felt right.
Sounds pretty perfect.
I think I love it. I love it. You know, a mezzanine in the middle. You can look out in all different views. Awesome lighting. But I think a lot of people have run into this issue in New York. At the time, landlords didn't know what pickleball was, and so it was a hard pitch. You know, there's no proven entity. You can't show like historical pickleball financials.
Yep.
Right? I can't show that this business has been operating and done whatever.
Yeah.
And let alone is pickleball a fad or not. and you're asking some landlord to believe in you and give you their building and expect you to make the payments and trust you to build it out. That was one of the harder pitches in a lot of the meetings initially with the landlords. And we had a lot of back and forth. And we negotiated this letter of intent, this LOI, honestly, for probably, it had to have been at least like 3 months. Because it took me into early summer of 2021. It's just surprised how much time's gone by. And we agreed on the terms.
Yeah.
And, brokers are talking, there's certain pressure, like this landlord has got other people looking at the space. And
was that from their broker? Yeah.
But it's like, okay, well, we've reached some kind of an agreement here. We've really narrowed down these deal terms. That takes a long time to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't always, but in this case it did. And then, at the very end, the broker's like, well, the landlord's considering between these two offers.
Got it.
And it doesn't look good.
So this was like you had an LOI in front of you, or you were like working out the details
of the
LOI? You signed the LOI.
Signed the LOI.
So it wasn't countersigned though?
Right. It wasn't countersigned. And I'm waiting on it, and I feel like anxious and frustrated because, like, why not? We just spent so much time working this through. If there's an issue, like, let me know.
Let's fix it. Yeah, let's get.
What do I need to do to get you more
line.
Comfortable?
Yeah.
And the broker pretty much said is gonna go with the other tenant. It was like shit, right? So like that was really low, and I was like, well, I got to do something. Because deals fall through or whatever happens, and I don't know, I was in a moment of like panic and anxiety. So I went on Fiverr and found a guy in Nigeria to write a rap song for me addressed to the landlord on why he should lease his space to me.
So we're gonna cut to that rap song in this
I got
video.
to show you this rap song. And threw together like a quick rendering of the front of the building.
Yeah.
Put this rap song on it, and literally did it in an afternoon. You'll hear this rap song. The guy is literally rapping to my text messages.
He's got the phone in front of him.
We're not like on the phone.
Yeah.
It's like he's really out there, and it's like I need a rap song. Trying to convince this landlord of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And here's what it is, and he just like took the text messages and just rapped to them. And he's like, and I need you to find me like a Google open source beat.
Yeah.
So just give me a beat and let's get the song done. And it was one draft. This wasn't like revised.
There's no ChatGPT back then.
No ChatGPT back then, and like no revisions. I can't wait to show you this rap song. So I sent it to the brokers, like, do you think I could send this? Will it help?
Yeah.
And they're just like, no, don't do it. Yeah, they're like, don't do it. It can make you seem amateur because he's going to be like, oh my God, who am I considering renting this out to? They're making me a rap song.
But you interacted directly with the landlord up until or was everything kind of with arm's length apart?
So I had interactions with him. We did like a couple interviews.
Yes.
And like discussed in our business plan. There was a few Zoom meetings.
Yep.
But it was like a lot more formal.
Yeah. You didn't get to really kind of, you didn't drag him out to the court,
no.
I assume.
No, I've tried to.
Yeah.
So right, it's more informal. You don't really know each other.
Yeah.
That's what the brokers told me. Not to do it. Like, it's cute and whatever, but like,
don't.
Yeah, at these prices and for these real estates and stuff like that, we don't think you should be just sending out like a rap video song to the landlord.
Fiverr.
Fuck it, I sent it.
Yeah.
And like got an email back from the landlord how he loved it, and like no one's ever done anything like that for him, or has he seen something like that?
Yeah.
He thought it was awesome, super creative, and he's like, look, I promise you, if anything happens here, I'm coming right back to you.
Okay.
And
Did you CC the brokers on the email you sent to the landlord, or are you just like,
I
screw
let
it?
them know.
You
He responded, and he responded positively.
Okay, all right. So they had to bite their tongue a little bit, or maybe.
Like we all have our opinions, right? Like,
Yeah.
They have their reputation to guard. To be like,
Sure.
well, we don't represent crazy clients.
Yeah.
So, that was like one of the lowest points because the space I was in love with, in the location I was in love with, and like I didn't have a real backup at that point.
Yeah.
And so that was low. And then you get over it, you recover, and you start looking for places again.
Yeah.
But it did take out some of the like juice and momentum because there weren't so many new places to just pull from thin air. Like we'd already been.
You saw all of them
from
pretty
everywhere
much.
we can pull.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, whatever new comes on or whatever. So I was down, and then over time, stay on the broker. He's sending more things. Found a place in Bushwick. I had to do all sorts of mental gymnastics to convince myself that Bushwick can be like
viable.
awesome.
Yeah.
Which I think it can. Just for me, like it's kind of far. It's in a different kind of space.
Yeah.
It just felt a little foreign to me. And doesn't have the easiest transportation. Just certain things, but you're like, it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Found a space there. Had a couple investors come out and meet me out there. Mm-hmm. And this was the first place they had seen. So they had never even seen this.
The Gowanus place.
Exactly.
But you brought on, so like, there's a little bit of chicken and the egg here.
It's all chicken and
egg. So
it is still chicken and egg.
So what was the first thing that you were, okay, so there's obviously there's this dream, there's your background, and then what was the first thing, I guess you were looking for spaces, and then while you're looking for spaces, who are you talking to, and how are you convincing them of like, hey, like, what's the order of operations?
Yeah, so I'm talking to people who believe in pickleball.
Yeah.
But they're not sold on pickleball. Talking to people who are like, if there's an actual business model to be had, great. And if not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So sort of like this passive involvement, but you just keep pulling them along. I mean, you just keep making sure they're in the know, even if it seems kind of annoying, right? Like,
you send any of them the
here's
rap
this
song?
place I saw. But so I think it's the idea of, like, once you can show that it can be reality, it becomes more of a reality.
Sure, yeah.
You get someone to touch something, smell something, whatever. It's a different feeling than just like, all right, this idea. And quite honestly, without the space, it's super hard to work out the economics.
Yeah.
So for all these places, I would have to go and redo like an entire financial model.
Yeah.
Off of whatever that build out would be and whatever condition it's in and whatever we can get for tenant improvements and what you can charge in a certain area and what you can't.
Yeah.
So it would all require a new model.
Yeah.
And so this Bushwick place could have been big, a lot more courts.
How many were you thinking?
That would have been big. That would have been about 12 courts.
Wow.
Yeah. And it had a huge lot outdoors, so we could do a lot of outdoor
Was
courts.
this the Netflix place or not that one?
No. I mean I don't all the brokers, they all say
It's a Netflix place.
They'll tell you whatever it is they think you want to hear. If you want to hear it's Netflix is there, or if you want to hear that 20 other pickleball people have looked into it.
Yep.
And you're like, are you sure it was pickleball?
Or padel,
and they're like,
paddle.
Oh, no, I guess it could have been another sport.
Yeah.
But so this place in Bushwick looks promising. And then I started to not fall in love, but become attracted to it.
Yeah.
So I would like bike out there at different times of the night and the day to see what the area is like.
Sit in a cafe, people watch.
Exactly.
The click counter, how many people are walking by.
Totally.
Yeah.
And really analyze that area. I'm like, I'm like on call at work. It totally dysfunctional. Because you know it's like you take off this day or afternoon. You want to make it work. And so that had promise. It met with the landlord, and ultimately, like, the landlord just screwed me over more or less. He just changed the entire deal. So once he felt
so
like
once again, you had an LOI in front of you.
had an LOI, and then he just decided that a huge part of the work he was going to have to do, like replace the entire roof because it had active leaks coming down, put in an HVAC or something, but substantial work.
But would have been beneficial for him as a landlord. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like he
and
needed
he did
that.
capital improvement.
Yeah.
But this was also work he represented in his like brochure, in his actual offer.
Right. Like, oh, a new roof will be there, HVAC, etc.
Like in their renderings of the way they're going to deliver the space to you.
Right, the white box.
They just changed it.
And they were like, okay, now it's your responsibility?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, all right, well,
That's...
I don't even want to get into this relationship because every lease is like a marriage.
Sure.
You're in it for 10, 20 years, whatever it is. You know, at least from the law, I've really learned you got to like your landlord. Landlord's got to like you. You at least have to work well together, communicate well together. You know, if there's signs of distrust, I would not recommend anyone go into that lease.
What are some of the things that, like, okay, obviously reneging on that, did you have any like red flags as you were like interacting with this? You know, we're like, not even this one specifically. What are some things that you're like?
No, this one, but this one for sure. Because I'm talking about pickleball, and he's telling me how much he loves soccer and paddle. You know, it's like, okay, but like, I'm just not sure.
We're speaking a different language here.
You know, you want like a cheerleader and a landlord who believes in your business and what you're trying to do. Yeah, in some ways, maybe he just wanted to kind of push me out of it. But that was also another very low moment because you finally find another place that's maybe doable, and
you did all this gymnastics to get there too.
Yep. And I would say after that, I was like, all right, I'm not sure I'm even looking anymore.
When was this?
This is now, so we are in, by the time I felt, we're talking like very end of...
Fall on?
by the time that fell apart, very end of 2021? Probably early 2022. Or like, because that started at the end of the summer, negotiated for a couple months, whatever it is. I remember when I first saw it, like the US Open was going on, so by the time that really fell apart, it was probably like December of 2021. And it's like, okay, I'm not sure where to look. Broker, keep looking. But it's, you know, not sure
if it's
what to really do at this point. And you know, I get back into work. I was already into work, but like, yeah, you stop checking LoopNet as much. And I would still go see places, but I think it was a little bit more, you know, casual.
Well, you like basically you fell in love twice, or like you fell in love the first time, you fell in like the second time, and you're like the emotional commitment that it takes to do it another time. I mean, it's like definitely a relationship, a marriage on so many different levels.
I fell in love once, and then had this disappointment, and then I went on like a pretty okay date after that. But that okay date felt more than it was because you're like recovering from. And there were cool places that were gutted and trying to do whatever, and you're always trying to revise the model, change the model. And then, so we are in 2023. It is August. So fast forward probably to like October of 2022. Maybe September, October. Maybe September. I was at work and I get a text message from the broker, and he's like, the Gowanus landlord is back. Their deal fell through. You know, are you even open to talking about it? And like my feelings were kind of hurt.
Sure.
You know, it's like, do I really want to go back there and do that? And obviously we would have to renegotiate the deal because
everything has changed.
it's different. And so, but still, it's like, all right. I was a little less emotionally attached. So it's like, let's try.
Yeah.
This is what I'm willing to do at this point.
So you felt like, okay, he threw the ball back in your court, and you like felt a little bit more like, I'm gonna dictate things the way I want to before like I get too overinvested again.
And see where they stand on this to see if like we can work together.
Yeah.
And the landlord understood that. So it was like a good sign that that's how, he wasn't expecting the same deal.
Sure.
Understanding what has happened.
Yeah. I mean, he's licking his wounds too, right? Like with that deal, another deal that fell through. So
exactly. And wants to fill the space and has to start again. At least it's with somebody who knows it. So renegotiate the LOI. Every single thing takes another week or two, right? Every little
red line,
takes more time. And also with that whole chicken and egg situation, I'm negotiating an LOI, but at the same time I need to make sure it works and I can
fundraise.
It. Like so if I sign a bad deal or something, that can also be catastrophic.
Yeah.
So we negotiated the LOI. That took a few months. And then I got more support from that because, it's becoming more real. It's building up again. You know, the other broker's not telling me that he's also considering it with some other offer. Like, we were working together a lot more at this point.
Yeah.
And based on how the last one went, I was going to be skeptical until I was actually sent a lease draft.
Yeah.
Because that would make it much more real.
So the LO, like, explain a little bit for people who don't understand, like, there's the LOI, there's the lease. What happens between, like, what does it mean to sign an LOI versus what does it mean to sign a lease?
Yep. So signing an LOI, these kind of LOI are a little bit meaningless. What they are is they're the high-end deal terms of it. Like, what is the lease term going to be? Roughly, what is the rent going to be? You know, who are the entities, and any kind of like special high-level deal terms that would be included. So it looks like one page.
Got it.
You know, a lease is 70 pages, but this is one page that's just the deal terms. And what you do when you sign an LOI is you're essentially agreeing to work in good faith together to work out an agreement.
Yeah.
So you're like agreeing that yes, this is the high level terms. Typically then a lawyer takes those high level terms and takes those and works them into a lease.
Yeah, got it. So what are the consequences of both of you sign an LOI, and then like what happens if something between then and the lease signing like breaks down?
So certainly things sometimes change and you renegotiate certain components, but you also really don't want to because, like I was saying before, it's this marriage, it's this long-term relationship. So you really want to develop trust and a degree of seriousness that what I say is my word is my word.
Yeah.
You know, like on that last letter of intent, he didn't countersign it, right? So I can't hold him to it.
Sure, yeah.
But when you actually do have like, we got a pickleball rolling through, there it goes. When you actually do have one, it's not a good look.
Yeah, to back out.
To back out and to, you're not bound by anything, you can, but it's a major red flag.
Yeah.
You know, you can revise like, if you find something totally different about the building you didn't know,
sure, you
can revise. There's negotiation in it, but if everything is kind of the way it seems and what it should be, so you negotiate the security deposit, the extent of any guarantee and what that looks like. All those things that matter a lot to the landlord and matter a lot to the tenant.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just very important details.
Yeah.
Our lease negotiation took a very long time. The longest lease negotiation, lease draft I've ever done in my entire legal career.
So what is
And
a long
that's
time?
not because
You were
no, it just happened to be in this one. This one was a slog, which emotionally was draining.
Yeah, but were you ever at a point where you're like, it's gotten to the point where you're not sure, or is just like it's just so much? It's like felt like pulling teeth a little bit.
Definitely unsure.
Okay.
Because there's a history of it already falling out.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a history of others falling out, and definitely unsure because there's a lot of red lines, and some of those details are really important.
Yeah.
I did not represent myself.
Sure.
So that way I wouldn't be so emotionally invested. I'd read it and give high-level thoughts on it.
Yeah.
You know, but I had my lawyers and put it in their hands, and I think they're excellent. But you know, sometimes what it really took to get this lease done was reaching out directly to the landlord several times and creating a list of the high-level business issues that seem to be lingering in the lease, and for the two of us to really talk about it and understand where each other's coming from, so we can, again, on a high level, come to an agreement and then translate that to the attorneys.
Yeah, right. Did you feel like, you know, I often say that a good negotiation is one where nobody kind of leaves happy, right?
So
where everyone leaves a little bit something on the table, right?
yeah, so I would flip it. So it's not where no one leaves happy. I would say a good negotiation is where everyone leaves happy. Because I always think there's a solution where we can all feel good about it.
Sure, yeah.
Rather than both parties feel badly about it.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to flip it.
And so I found that, and I think someone did too, that we can work together well. And I think that also reinforced our own relationship and our own ability to move forward and have confidence in this process.
Yeah.
And that's worked well, but New York is hard. I know. I mean, New York real estate is difficult. And commercial tenants, landlords, everyone is a little scarred, especially then coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of landlords had tenants where they suffered a lot of issues. A lot of tenants have had landlords who don't do certain things. You know, a lot of our time, you know, before you sign a lease, there's so much due diligence to be done. So could someone sign it in 3 weeks? Yes. There's no way you will have done your due diligence by then.
Right.
And before you go into such a substantial venture, like, there's a lot to be done.
Yeah.
And that's an inspection of the entire building, right? And it's an inspection for environmental stuff and for structural things and for zoning laws.
And that's all before lease signing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zoning laws, liquor licensing laws, and ability.
Yeah. But that's very important for the model, I'm sure.
It's well, and you don't want to. It is, and you don't want to go down the road where you find out like, oh, we're zoned for a certain kind of thing, and we actually can't do this permitted use here.
Yeah.
Or we would need all sorts of special permission that we can't necessarily rely on because we might be in a lease and then not get that.
Right.
Or you find out like you're zoned as this kind of a thing, and if you build this kind of pickleball place, then you have a parking requirement. And you're like, oh wait, I know we needed a parking requirement. Well, there goes the whole business.
Yeah.
Where am I going to pick up a parking lot for this? Yeah, so I mean, before signing the lease, I mean, I got lasers in the space to measure every square inch of it.
Yeah.
To make sure that what I think can work for courts
can
actually work for courts.
Yeah.
And then so much of like the PKLYN brand and identity is just to be a quality place for play. Yeah. And that play is pickleball, but also like community and time with friends and to be quality. Yeah, we're a big believer in making sure that, you know, each court is 34 by 64. You know, something that gives you at least 7 feet on each side and 10 feet off the baselines on all the courts without running into something. Quality materials, quality through and through. I think New York demands quality, and that's what we want to bring, quality pickleball to New York. So even as we're looking at places, that quality factor was always critical.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, we could put courts in here, but we'll only have about 4 to 5 feet behind it. And you're like, well, 4 to 5 feet was okay when I was on the handball court, so maybe it works here.
Yeah.
But
I mean, a lot of it is like, you know, we see all the different conditions that players are willing to work with here in the city, right? You got handball courts that are short by a feet. You got massive cracks. You got weeds growing out of everything. You got, you know, all different types of surfaces, and yet everyone's still out there. And then you have to figure out, well, like, who is my target?
Yeah.
What do they play on? What are they willing to play on? But what are they willing to pay for as well? And like, how do I add value?
How do you add value? And what do you want to bring in, and what do you want to do for the sport? Like, I really want to elevate the sport. I think sport is doing great. I think it is growing like crazy. I think there's a lot of excellent stuff out there. But I'd like it to feel a little bit, for lack of a better word, hipper. And more community driven, and less of a tennis facility, and less, you know, high quality sport is important, and, you know, the best players expecting the best quality, PKLYN would be there for them.
Yep.
But also want it to be a very high quality experience for your not sport centric person, and to not come into the space and feel like I've entered into a sporting facility.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna have a full bar, lounge. It's 23 skylights. I mean the amount of natural light and the feeling in there. Want it to be a community hangout, somewhere you go, maybe even if you're not going to be playing pickleball, but you'll swing by there, maybe work from there, and see your friends and see who else is out there.
Yeah.
Or go out for a blast on a Friday night, Saturday night, and play some drunk pickleball instead of some super competitive pickleball. But, you know,
which we may or may not have done on the pier, on the handball courts before.
Or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and get really competitive, and, you know, just running all programming correlated stuff is gonna build out just banging programming. That's gonna be able to really help people graduate level to level with a really focused approach. And so yeah, I mean, that's what we plan to bring.
Yeah.
And space for that is important. So measuring it out, making sure that you can fit what you need to fit in there.
Yeah.
Looking at plumbing, lighting, spacing, ADA access, all that due diligence, and frankly, those funds expended before there's any lease signing.
Right. So between the LOI, there's actually quite a bit of investment into the due diligence.
Big.
And then I guess, are there contingencies in the LOI where it's like, okay, let's say you're doing your due diligence, you spend X number of thousands of dollars, but like something drastic comes up. Like, is there any sort of, I guess you could probably write that in the LOI if like.
Yeah, but so the LOI you can always back out of.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
But as far as certain contingencies in the it's hard to do in New York.
Yeah.
New York is the fiercest landlord-tenant contracts.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of them, but I think what we have is really good and fair. I think it's actually fair.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about allocation of risk. And so we're all just ascribing different risk to each other and trying to figure out what seems like a fair risk for one person to take on, and what seems like a fair risk for another person.
Right, and let's all be comfortable with that amount of risk.
And so, like, it was a grind getting to that finish line.
Yeah, but
I
you're
think
there.
For all of us. And we did. We actually did.
Yeah.
You know, and you go and you sign it, and as much as you'd think that signing day would be some huge, just
momentous
relief or super excitement, somehow by that point it's almost anticlimactic.
Yeah.
I think by that point It was almost a regular day, and because at that point, like, you know it's gonna happen.
Yeah, you're
It's
like,
a
this
matter
better
of, like,
be signed.
Yeah, it's a matter of like some paper moving back and forth, and now
Yeah.
you're waiting for that signature. But then right from there, it's just a matter of like, okay, we got to figure out branding
Yeah.
and announce, so that way you can carve out some real estate, because you
Yeah.
don't want someone opening up next door to you. And then, like, yeah, you got to show a landlord like your plans,
Yeah.
development. Yeah, I mean, like, when you go and look at certain real estate, what do you look for pickleball that seems ideal?
I mean, the most fundamental things, as you said, space, ceiling height, column width.
Like, what's the ceiling height that you think? When you look at it, you're like, am I gonna go with like New York heights, or what would be?
Yeah, I mean, I think like 18 plus ideal. Some areas, you're never like, oh, there's a pipe here, and drops it down to 16, because like, I've been out to Long Island, I've brought my secret laser measure.
We have a few pipes.
Right. Yeah, there's always going to be a few pipes
Venting.
and whatever, right? Like, in my mind, we're like, well, this will make people's lobs better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of ironic, because in the space that we kind
Funny
of,
way to put it.
yeah, it's like, it's over, but not too much higher. I mean, the space that we currently kind of like operate out of, like, they're 90-foot ceilings, so it's like kind of the opposite, where people's like infinite lobs, sky lobs can work. But I mean, 90-foot ceilings is pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, as you said, like, when you come at it from like a pickleball centric perspective, the court dimensions is always the most important thing. You're like, yes, where can I sacrifice some space, but at the same time, if people are going to be paying for the experience, or the types of players that you want to attract, right? Yeah. There are players that are a little bit more casual, that are learning the game, and maybe the side space and ATPs, whatever, isn't as important. And if that's your target, totally fine, right? But if you're coming at it from like, I want this to be a place where all levels can be, high level, whatever, and players like ourselves, like, we know what we want, and like we're building a space for ourselves almost first, that, as you said, is going to feel like a home. It's something that we're going to enjoy.
Right.
And then you can go out and be like, this is our home. Like, we're building it for ourselves, but also for the people who we want to share our space with.
And in that same, like, being our homes, I mean, exactly what you said. That's what we want to share, right? We want to share what we think it can really be.
Yeah.
Right? And like what that full experience would feel like. If we could only find courts that were 15 feet wide and 25 feet deep, right? Well, I think we just wouldn't want to share that.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah, and your ceiling height, it's the same, like 18, 9, something like it, right?
Yeah.
If the broker sends it for 15, you're like, I don't think so.
Yeah. But you still go just to look, just to see how it feels.
And some of them feel awesome. I think there's so many different ways to do it. I think the sport's potential is obviously, I think it's massive. It's not a trend, but I think New York is the most special place to do it. I truly believe New York is the place that obviously excites me the most.
Yeah.
The whole urban feel, the sense of community, the type of people, the diversity, it's just kind of, it's badass. I think New York's going to be a central hub for pickleball. It's not there yet, but I think it certainly can be. I think we're going to see a lot more pros that will develop out of programming. I mean, The programming you guys are doing at NYC Pickleball is awesome, and certainly helping a lot of players truly develop, find competitive play, allow them to develop, giving clinics and lessons. I mean, this is how community in the sport really grows.
Yeah.
And in that same vein, people then really need places to play and develop those skills.
Yeah.
And the more and more New York has even developed, which compared to Florida's and Texas and Utah's is nowhere, we're producing pros.
Yeah.
And we're producing real talent.
So imagine what we can do with actual space and facilities.
Imagine what we can do with 8.8 million people just in New York City who are smart, educated, talented people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tennis players here too, but there's also a lot of baseball players, hockey players who
athletes
all need a lot of athletes who need outlets and community. And I think the potential here is honestly like nowhere else.
Yeah.
And it's just so unique for New York because it is so community driven. And we're all driven out into the streets together. We're all forced out of our places for the day with our backpack, find a cafe to work out of or whatever. We can't like hide in our cars and homes and really stay in that bubble. We have to engage with our environment.
Yeah.
But I personally haven't seen anything quite as engaging and social and communal in New York as pickleball. I've met more people through pickleball than anything else. I mean, like, certain religious things is one avenue, but this is just different. This is through play.
Yeah.
This is through play.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really special.
I mean, I think for us to kind of have like a career path and then COVID to happen where everyone's like uncertainty is shaken up, and for us to be like take that dive into pickleball full time, like fully commit, you know, like whatever pay, like cut in half, cut in a quarter, but still feel like this is the right path for us. Like, and it's not just us. There's so many people all around the city who are turning this into a huge part of their lives and a huge part of like their friends' lives and families' lives, you know, frankly, that it is truly special. And it needs the special infrastructure to for what it deserves, right?
It needs the infrastructure.
Yeah.
It needs the infrastructure. I mean, what keeps you up at night when you think about the sport? Are you ever sometimes like, what if it's a fad?
That I know for certain that it's not.
I agree, but sometimes when you're just like that brief moment, you know? Or no, not at all.
It better not be. I think because we've committed, better not be a fad. No, I mean, like, part of the difficulty in New York, you see all these empty handball walls, right? And so I think like part of the hesitation from the city over the past couple of years, it's changed, their attitude has changed recently, but it's like handball was such a big thing, and they erected these giant monoliths all around the city, and then now like nobody was playing. But like I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from handball and other racket sports that had a similar kind of trajectory and then suddenly sort of petered out or like just fell off. And I think what you alluded to in terms of like the development of the community, like what I hear about like handball stories, like all the higher level players, they like gatekeeps, right? They're like, no one else, you're like, if you don't know us, you're not allowed to play with us. It's XYZ, right? And then like new people weren't exposed to the sport, they weren't allowed in, right? And so like that's honestly what keeps us up at night a little bit more. It's like, how do we continue to, despite New York not having the infrastructure, how do we continue to allow new people to come in? How do we continue to allow intermediate people to play both down and up? And how do we help like advanced players find the right games?
It's a skill. It's definitely props to you. Like that's not an easy thing to do and accomplish. It really requires a real degree of pickleball intelligence to do and accomplish well.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, every city deals with this issue, right? Every city, every like 4:00 plus whatever, like, I have to wake up at 6 o'clock to play. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, some maybe not, but like every urban area, there, like you talk to people and like, we have to go at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. to play. But I mean, as long as people are thinking about it and like being aware, and it's not, just us, like I think we kind of help to create some guidelines and some like overarching themes that allow other people in their local community kind of follow, right? And like they can come to us and be like, hey, we're dealing with this situation, like what's the best suggestion, right? And like there's no perfect answer.
No, but it's amazing that people are asking like that, and they're thinking about the community, and it's it is sort of democratized. Like in New York, you've got to orchestrate with other people on not only like what time can you do, because in New York people work 24 hours a day. It's like, I'm sorry, my schedule tonight because I'll be in the hospital from 10 p.m. till 11 a.m. Can anyone play at 1 in the afternoon, right?
Yeah. And I got to bring my net.
And then the next factor is, well, where can we play? who has a net, who's got tape,
Yeah.
who's got the
chalk.
tape measure, who can get to a place to hold this down.
Yeah.
It requires legitimate coordination beyond, I'll see you there at 3
Show
o'clock.
up. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to work together.
Yeah. Which, like, it'll be interesting to see how, as like the infrastructure develops, and like we've already seen it with some of the places, right? Like, people, I mean, we're gonna be like, well, you don't know what it was like back in our day, when we had to lug a bike with our 25-pound nets, 30-degree weather, to the handball courts.
You honestly just made me feel legitimately old. Like, there's times where I have felt like, I'm getting older, but that made me feel like, no, that's a really real story.
Yeah.
I'll probably be telling.
Yeah. Like when Pier 2 finally puts in like another 6 courts, and like, oh, remember back when there were 40 stacks of paddles in the queue, right?
I mean, what we're doing now is, it's like if a basketball player had to go and bring a basketball net wherever they played.
Yeah.
It's like, who's bringing the post and
right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's people like you that are like community focused and like pickleball focused that are coming in and like creating the space and being thoughtful about it, and getting people really excited about this idea of like, what the next step of pickleball in the city is going to look like, and it's going to inspire others. And I think more is more, and it's always better for everyone, right? Like, I think, the way we approach it, given that we had such parallel sort of paths, we also were looking back then, but then we were like, well, like, are there enough people there playing the sport, right? And so I think we kind of fell into this like community organizing thing, because we're like, well, I guess it makes sense if we just build the pie as a whole first, and then we have something to show like landlords and potential investors to believe us.
Yes.
And we're not like selling a dream, we're like actually selling, hey, like, we quit our jobs, like, we're bringing in revenue, like, we have whatever, XYZ. And then maybe it's a little bit easier. So it's like 2 different paths to the same point, but it's like we're all kind of converging at the same time. I
totally agree. I think it's just a really exciting time for all of it. Look, and it's nice people coming up from the community, trying to serve that same community.
Yeah.
Yes, these are all businesses that need to function as a business.
Yeah.
And obviously serve a wider and broader community. But it's quality. It's not trying to. It's trying to actually enhance the sport. It's trying to do it long term. It's not trying to just jump on something quickly.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. Look, this coming year is going to be presumably huge.
For you, for pickleball,
and then for Brooklyn and New York, and then there'll be others, and look forward to them, and might be more of us too. So like, keep going, keep growing, and then try hard.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else like we missed that you wanted to kind of touch upon?
I'm sure.
Save it for next time.
I could talk all night.
Yeah.
So, I think we're good.
Yeah.
PKLYN will be here in summer 2024. And it's good to talk to you. And this is a lot of fun. I could do this all the time.
Follow PKLYN on Instagram.
PKLYN official.
PKLYN official.
PKLYN_official. And we're going to post that rap song too.
End of the clip, throw it in right there.
I'm going to show you this rap song right after we end this. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.